Look at this. You see what you've done? You can't even carry a cup without turning it into a disaster. You think this is some coffee shop? This is my floor, my reputation. We have clients in here in 20 minutes and you're standing there like a statue. Clean it up, now, you hear me?
Yeah, I hear you.
They laughed as the coffee spilt across his sneakers, the scalding liquid seeping through the worn canvas until it burned his skin. One department head, drunk or authority and blinded by arrogance, thought he was just teaching an intern a lesson in corporate hierarchy. He left Xavier standing in the middle of the open-plan office, humiliated and dripping, mocking his silence, treating the heir to a billion-dollar empire like he was disposable. But what Dominic Thorne didn't know was that the young black man he was destroying wasn't just a low-level intern. He was the man coming to take his job and the entire executive floor with it. This is the story of Xavier St. and the reckoning that hit St. Clair Industries so hard it changed the company forever. You are not going to believe how this ends. The elevator doors opened on the executive floor with a soft chime. No one looked up. Xavier stepped out in his plain gray hoodie, holding a cardboard tray of coffees he had been sent to fetch by people who hadn't bothered to learn his name. He had been here 3 days, long enough to understand the hierarchy, long enough to see who barked orders, long enough to start recording everything. "Hey, coffee kid." The voice came from the glass corner office. Xavier didn't need to turn to know who it was. Dominic, head of operations, expensive navy suit, polished shoes, the kind of man who spoke to interns like they were part of the furniture. "Get in here." Xavier walked in calmly. Dominic didn't look at him. He was typing an email, irritation written across his face. "You interns are all the same. Slow, useless, no awareness." He finally looked up. "Stand there. Don't drip on the carpet." Xavier stood quietly, holding the tray. Dominic reached for a cup without breaking eye contact, then deliberately knocked it from Xavier's hands. The coffee exploded across the floor. Hot liquid soaked through Xavier's sneakers instantly. A few drops splashed onto Dominic's desk. Dominic shot to his feet. "Are you stupid? Look what you did!" The shout carried through the glass walls, heads turned across the executive floor. Xavier didn't move, didn't argue, didn't apologize. He simply watched. Because this, right here, was the moment he had been waiting for. He glanced once at the tiny lens clipped beneath the seam of his hoodie. Still recording. 3 days of footage already saved. This would be the 4th. Dominic was still yelling, still humiliating, still unaware that the quiet intern standing in front of him was the majority shareholder's grandson, and the man sent here to decide who would still be working on this floor by the end of the week. Before we continue with Xavier's story, if you're enjoying this tale of justice and karma, please hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you don't miss what happens next. Trust me, you won't want to miss how this ends. Now, let's get back to the story. Xavier's alarm went off at 5:30 a.m. He rolled out of bed in his small apartment and looked at the 2 suits hanging in his closet. One was custom-made Italian wool, tailored perfectly to fit his frame, with his initials stitched inside the jacket. The other was a cheap navy suit from a discount store, slightly too big in the shoulders, with pants that bunched at his ankles. He chose the cheap one. By 7:45 a.m., Xavier stood outside the glass towers of St. Clair Industries. The building seemed to touch the clouds. His grandfather had built this, stone by stone, deal by deal. Alaric St. Clair had created an empire, and now Xavier was about to walk through those doors like he was nobody. The revolving doors spun, and Xavier stepped into the marble lobby. His sneakers squeaked on the polished floor. The echo echoed in the massive space, and a few people in expensive suits turned to look. Their eyes passed right over him, seeing exactly what he wanted them to see. Just another kid in an ill-fitting suit, probably lost. "Badge," the security guard said without looking down from his phone. His name tag read Marcus. Xavier pulled out his temporary intern badge. The photo was terrible. The title read General Assistant, Unpaid. Marcus barely glanced at it before waving him through. No smile, no welcome, no good morning. This was a man his signature could fire in an instant. This was a man whose paycheck came from the St. Clair Family Trust, and he treated Xavier like heir. Xavier walked past the security desk towards the elevators. On the wall, massive and gold-framed, hung his grandfather's portrait. Alaric St. Clair stared down at the lobby with wise, knowing eyes. Xavier stopped. He looked up at his grandfather's face. "I see it now, Grandpa. I see exactly what you meant." The elevator dinged. Xavier stepped inside. The real work was about to begin. The 40th floor was already buzzing with activity when Xavier arrived. He clocked in at the intern station, a tiny desk shoved in the corner near the copy room. Before he could even set down his messenger bag, a sharp voice cut through the morning chatter. "You, coffee kid, get over here." Dominic Thorne stood by his office door, checking his expensive watch. He was the kind of man who wore his power like cologne, too much and everyone could smell it. His hair was slicked back with so much gel it looked wet. Xavier walked over. "Yes, sir?" "I need coffee. There's a shop 2 blocks down. Grande latte, extra hot, 2 pumps vanilla, oat milk. Think you can handle that, or is it too complicated?" He didn't wait for an answer. He shoved a $20 bill into Xavier's hand. "And don't take forever. Some of us actually work for a living." Xavier took the money and headed to the elevator. He memorized the order perfectly. Extra hot, 2 pumps vanilla, oat milk. He stood in line at the coffee shop, repeated it to the barista, and checked the cup 3 times before leaving. When he returned, Dominic snatched the cup from his hand and took a sip, his face twisted like he tasted poison. "Are you kidding me?" Dominic's voice boomed across the office. Everyone stopped working. "I said oat milk. OT milk. This is almond." Xavier opened his mouth to explain, but Dominic was already performing for his audience. "This is what we get these days? Can't even handle a simple coffee order?" He laughed, looking around at the other employees. "Maybe you should stick to shredding paper. At least the machine does the thinking for you." A few people chuckled nervously. Sasha Reed, sitting 2 desks away, looked down at her keyboard. Xavier took the cup back. "I'll fix it, sir." "Yeah, you will." Xavier returned with the correct coffee 30 minutes later. Dominic slammed his office door shut. The message was clear. Xavier wasn't even worth a thank you. "Hey, you okay?" Xavier turned to find a woman standing behind him. She was maybe 30, with tired eyes and a kind smile. Her desk was covered with files and sticky notes. A cold cup of coffee sat next to her keyboard, probably from yesterday. "I'm fine," Xavier said. "I'm Sasha Reed, senior associate." She held out her hand. "And you're Xavier." She shook Xavier's hand. Her grip was firm, genuine. "Come on, Xavier. Let me show you where the supply closet is. You'll be making a lot of trips there." Sasha led him down a hallway, away from Dominic's office. Once they were alone, her smile faded. "Listen, Xavier, I saw what just happened. That's Dominic's favorite game. He sets you up to fail, then humiliates you in front of everyone, makes him feel big." She grabbed a box of printer paper from the shelf. "How long have you been here?" 6 weeks. 6 weeks? Sasha was surprised. "And you're still standing? Most interns quit after 2. "Why do people stay?" Xavier asked. "If he's this bad, why doesn't someone report him?" Sasha laughed, but there was no humor in it.
Report him to who? HR? Dominic plays golf with the HR director. The board? They're never here. They just look at numbers, and Dominic's good at making numbers look pretty. She handed Xavier the paper. 3 years ago, there was a guy named Marcus Chen, brilliant analyst. He questioned one of Dominic's reports in a meeting. Within a month, Marcus was fired for performance issues. "That's not right," Xavier said. "No, it's not, but that's how it works here." Sasha's voice dropped to a whisper. "Dominic doesn't just ruin careers, Xavier. He ruins lives, and nobody stops him." Xavier nodded slowly. "Maybe somebody should." Xavier's last task of the day was always the same: empty the trash bins on the executive floor. It was the kind of job that made him invisible. People talked freely when someone was just collecting garbage. They forgot he had ears. He pushed the gray cleaning cart from office to office. In each one, he dumped wastebaskets into the large bin, his eyes scanning without seeming to look. Most of it was typical office waste: coffee cups, food wrappers, printed emails that said nothing important. Dominic's office was different. Xavier knocked once, then entered. Dominic was gone for the day, probably at some fancy dinner he'd expensed to the company. The office smelled like expensive cologne and leather. Xavier moved to the trash can beside the desk. That's when he saw it. A crumpled piece of paper sat on top of the pile. Xavier picked it out, smoothing it out carefully. It was an internal memo, marked confidential in red letters at the top. The header read, Q4 Bonus Reallocation Strategy. Xavier's eyes moved down the page. His heart started beating faster. The memo outlined a plan to redirect employee performance bonuses into a separate account. The account number was listed. Below it, in Dominic's handwriting, were the words, Move funds before audit. Transfer Thursday. Xavier read it again, making sure he understood. Dominic wasn't just stealing credit for other people's work, he was stealing their money. Bonuses that employees had earned through late nights and hard work were being rerouted before they ever saw their bank accounts. Xavier pulled out his phone and took 3 photos of the memo. Then he folded it carefully and slipped it into his messenger bag. He replaced it in the trash with a similar-looking crumpled paper. Evidence number 1, Xavier whispered to himself. He finished emptying the trash and left the office exactly as he'd found it. Dominic had made his first real mistake. He'd underestimated the trash collector. At 6:45 p.m., everyone started packing up their desks. Sasha waved goodbye, her arms full of files to review at home. The analysts logged off their computers. The admin assistants grabbed their coats. One by one, the office emptied until only the hum of the air conditioning remained. Xavier was putting on his jacket when Dominic appeared. "Not so fast, coffee kid." Dominic pointed toward the copy room. "See those boxes? All of that needs to be shredded tonight." Xavier looked. 6 large boxes were stacked against the wall, each one overflowing with documents. That's thousands of pages. Then it'd better get started. Dominic adjusted his bow tie in the reflection of a window. He was wearing a tuxedo now, perfectly tailored. "I'm going to the Children's Hospital Charity Gala. Doing important work, making the company look good." "This'll take hours," Xavier said. "Then it's a good thing you're hourly." "Oh wait, you're not. You're unpaid. Consider it a learning experience." He grabbed his coat and keys. "Lock up when you're done. And Xavier, if even 1 page is left unshredded, don't bother coming back tomorrow." The elevator doors closed, and Dominic was gone. Xavier stood alone in the empty office. The city lights twinkled through the windows. Somewhere across town, Dominic would be shaking hands with rich people, pretending to care about sick children. Meanwhile, the actual work happened here, in the dark, done by someone he thought was nobody. He walked to the first box and pulled out a stack of papers. Before feeding them into the shredder, he read the top page, then the next, then the next. These weren't random documents. These were performance reviews, expense reports, internal investigations. Everything that could make Dominic look bad was being destroyed. Xavier pulled out his phone and started taking pictures. The shredder could wait. Xavier finished photographing the documents at 11:30 p.m. His phone's memory was nearly full. He'd captured everything: fraudulent expense reports, complaints that were never investigated, emails where Dominic bragged about getting rid of dead weight. The evidence was damning. He fed the papers into the shredder like Dominic had ordered, watching them turn into confetti. But the real documents, the proof, were already backed up to 3 different cloud servers. Xavier locked the office and took the elevator down to the lobby. The building was almost empty now, just a night security guard dozing at his desk and the cleaning crew working on the lower floors. He should have gone home. His apartment was 40 minutes by subway. He had to be back in 7 hours, but something made him stop. The portrait. Xavier stood in the center of the marble lobby looking up at his grandfather's face. The painting was huge, at least 8 feet tall. Alaric St. Clair wore a dark suit and a gentle smile. His eyes seemed to look right through the canvas, straight into Xavier's soul. "Is this what you built, Grandpa?" Xavier's voice echoed in the empty space. "Did you work your whole life so people like Dominic could steal from the employees? So good people like Sasha could be worked to death while men in tuxedos take credit?" The portrait didn't answer, but Xavier didn't need it to. He knew the stories. His grandfather had started with nothing. He'd been a janitor once, just like the crew working upstairs right now. He'd built this company on respect, hard work, and treating people fairly. Somewhere along the way, that vision had died. "I'm going to fix it," Xavier promised. "I'm going to make this place what you wanted it to be, even if I have to burn it down and start over." He touched the gold nameplate beneath the portrait. Alaric St. Clair, founder and visionary, 1945 to 2023. "I won't let them forget you, Grandpa. I promise." The conference room was packed. Senior managers sat around the long table, their laptops open and coffee cups steaming. Xavier was standing in the back corner, holding a stack of folders Dominic had ordered him to deliver. He was supposed to drop them off and leave, but Dominic was too busy talking to notice him. "Settle down, everyone." Dominic stood at the head of the table, clicking through a presentation on the massive screen. Sasha sat 3 seats down, her hands folded on the table. Xavier noticed the dark circles under her eyes. She looked like she hadn't slept in days. "As you all know, Richardson Tech was considering pulling their contract with us, $20 million on the line." Dominic smiled like a shark. "But thanks to my strategic intervention, they've agreed to not only stay, but expand their partnership by another $15 million. The room erupted in applause. Senior managers nodded approvingly. Someone said, "Great work, Dominic." Xavier watched Sasha's face. She didn't clap, she didn't smile, she just stared at her coffee cup. The key was understanding their pain points and offering customized solutions. "I personally spent 3 weeks developing a proposal that addressed every concern." That was a lie. Xavier knew it was a lie, because he'd seen Sasha working on that exact proposal for the past month. He'd brought her dinner at 9 p.m. one night, because she was still at her desk refining the numbers. He'd watched her rehearse the presentation in an empty conference room, perfecting every slide. "So let's give ourselves a round of applause," Dominic said. "This is what excellence looks like." More clapping, more praise. Sasha stood up quietly and left the room. Nobody noticed except Xavier. He found her in the bathroom hallway, leaning against the wall, wiping her eyes. "That was your proposal," Xavier said softly. Sasha laughed bitterly. "Yeah, it was." Xavier was carrying a box of files to the storage room when he heard Dominic's voice behind him. "Out of the way, intern." Xavier stepped to the side, pressing himself against the wall to let Dominic pass. But instead of walking by, Dominic stopped right in front of him. He was holding a large coffee cup, steam rising from the lid. "You know what your problem is," Dominic said, loud enough for everyone in the open office to hear. "You think you belong here, but you're just—" Dominic's foot shot out suddenly. It looked like a stumble, like he'd lost his balance, but Xavier saw it in slow motion. The deliberate shift of weight, the careful angle of the cup, the practiced movement of someone who'd done this before. The coffee splashed across Xavier's sneakers. Hot liquid soaked through the canvas immediately, burning his feet. Xavier gasped and stepped back, the box of files tumbling from his hands, papers scattered across the floor. "Oh no," Dominic said, his voice dripping with fake concern. "I'm so sorry. I must have tripped. You really should stand somewhere less crowded, though. This hallway isn't meant for loitering." People were watching now. Some looked away quickly. Others pretended to be focused on their screens. Nobody said anything. Xavier stood there, his sneakers dark with coffee, his socks soaked, his feet throbbing from the heat. The humiliation burned hotter than the liquid. "Well," Dominic gestured at the scattered papers, "are you going to clean up this mess, or do I need to call maintenance?" Xavier knelt down and started gathering the files. His hands shook slightly, not from fear, but from the effort of staying calm. Every fiber of his being wanted to stand up and tell Dominic exactly who he was, wanted to watch the color drain from that smug face. But not yet. "Sorry, sir," Xavier said quietly. "I'll clean it up." Dominic walked away, whistling. Xavier kept picking up papers, his jaw clenched tight. Soon, he thought. Very soon. That night, Xavier sat in his small apartment with his laptop open.
His feet still hurt from the coffee burn. He'd had to throw away the sneakers. They were ruined. But the pain didn't matter now. He had work to do. Xavier opened a secure email program that only 5 people in the world had access to. The encryption was military grade. Every message disappeared after being read. The board of directors had given him this program on his first day, though Dominic had no idea it existed. He began typing. Toxicity Audit Week 6, Confidential. To Board of Directors, St. Clair Industries. Subject, Department Head Dominic Thorne, Final Assessment. Evidence Summary. Financial fraud. Employee bonuses redirected to personal accounts. See attached documents, photos 1 through 47. Destruction of internal investigation records. See photos 48 through 203. Credit theft. Richardson Tech proposal created by Senior Associate Sasha Reed, claimed by Thorne. See witness timeline. Hostile work environment. 91% of department staff report fear of retaliation. Recommendation: immediate termination and criminal investigation. The culture of fear Thorne has created extends beyond his department. Employees who witness his behavior learn that cruelty is rewarded and silence is survival. This is not the company Alaric St. Clair built. I have completed the audit. I am ready to assume my position as chairman. The pruning begins Thursday. X.S.C. Xavier attached 203 photographs, 12 audio recordings, and a spreadsheet tracking every incident he'd witnessed. He documented everything: the coffee spills, the late nights, the stolen credit, the embezzled bonuses. His finger hovered over the send button. Once he pressed it, there was no going back. The board would act. Dominic's days were numbered. Xavier thought about Sasha, working late while Dominic took credit. He thought about the other employees who'd been fired for speaking up. He thought about his grandfather's portrait in the lobby. He pressed send. The email disappeared into the encrypted network, traveling to 6 different board members across 3 time zones. By morning, they would know everything. Xavier closed his laptop and smiled. Thursday, he whispered to himself. Just hold on until Thursday. Wednesday mornings started like any other. Xavier arrived at 7:45 a.m., clocked in, and began organizing files in the copy room. Through the glass walls, he could see Dominic arrive at 9:30, carrying his designer briefcase and expensive coffee. Everything was normal until 10:25. "Where is it?" Dominic's voice exploded across the office. Papers flew off his desk as he ripped through drawers. "Where the hell is the Patterson file?" Managers poked their heads out of offices. Assistants froze at their desks. Even Sasha looked up from her computer, alarmed. Xavier kept his head down, continuing to sort files, but he was listening carefully. Dominic stormed out of his office, his face red with panic. "The Patterson contract. I had it yesterday. It's worth $3 million, and the signing is today at noon. Someone took it." "Did you check your briefcase?" one of his senior managers asked. "Of course I checked my briefcase. I'm not an idiot." Dominic spun around, his eyes scanning the office like a predator looking for prey. Then they landed on Xavier. Xavier felt the shift before Dominic even spoke. He knew what was coming. "You," Dominic marched toward the copy room. "You were in my office yesterday, emptying trash." "Yes, sir," Xavier said calmly. "Did you see a blue folder, this thick? Patterson Industries written on the tab?" "No, sir. I only emptied the trash cans." "Only emptied the trash. Right, because that's all you're capable of." He stepped closer, invading Xavier's space. "Here's what I think happened. I think you saw that folder. I think you took it. Maybe sold it to a competitor. How much did they pay you?" Xavier's jaw tightened. "I didn't take anything." "You're the only one who was in my office." Dominic's voice rose. "You're the only one with access." "That's not true. The cleaning crew." "Don't you dare blame the cleaning crew. This is on you." Xavier said nothing. Dominic smiled slowly, like a plan was forming. You know what? This is perfect. The incompetent intern loses $1 million contract. Makes perfect sense. Dominic didn't wait for a private conversation. He wanted an audience. Everyone, stop working. His voice boomed across the entire floor. I need you all to see this. I need witnesses. Phones were put down. Keyboards went silent. Every single person in the open plan office turned to watch. Some looked uncomfortable. Others seemed curious. Nobody intervened. Dominic grabbed Xavier by the shoulder and pulled him out of the copy room into the center of the office space. Xavier didn't resist. He stood there calmly, his face neutral, even as dozens of eyes locked onto him. This, Dominic announced, pointing at Xavier like he was evidence in a trial, this is what happens when you hire people who don't belong here. This intern, whose name I can't even remember, lost a $3 million contract, the Patterson deal. Gone, because he can't follow simple instructions. I didn't lose anything, Xavier said quietly. Don't you interrupt me. Dominic's face turned purple. Spit flew from his mouth. You don't get to speak. You don't get to defend yourself. You know why? Because you're nobody. You're less than nobody.
You're a charity case who can't even file papers correctly. The words echoed in the silent office. Xavier felt every eye on him. He saw Sasha standing near her desk, her hand covering her mouth. He saw younger employees looking down at their shoes, ashamed but too afraid to speak up. I gave you a chance, Dominic continued, pacing now like a lawyer in court. Against my better judgment, I let you work here, and this is how you repay me? By stealing? By sabotaging this company? I didn't steal anything, Xavier repeated, his voice steady. Then where is it? Dominic stepped so close their faces were inches apart. Where is my file? Xavier looked him dead in the eye. I don't know. Maybe you misplaced it. The entire office gasped. Dominic's hand clenched into a fist. For a moment, Xavier thought he might actually swing. But instead, Dominic pulled out his phone. I'm calling security, he said coldly. You're done here. While they waited for security, Dominic wasn't finished. He circled Xavier like a shark, making sure everyone could hear every word. You know what your real problem is? Dominic said, his voice dripping with contempt. You don't understand how lucky you are. Do you have any idea how many people would kill for the opportunity you just threw away? Xavier stood perfectly still, his hands at his sides. His face showed nothing. People like you, Dominic emphasized those 3 words, don't usually get through the door of a place like this. But we have diversity initiatives now. We have to give chances to people who haven't earned them, people who don't come from the right backgrounds, people who don't have the education, the skills, or frankly, the work ethic. Someone in the crowd shifted uncomfortably, but still, nobody spoke up. I tried to help you, Dominic said, his voice suddenly softer, like a disappointed parent. I gave you simple tasks, coffee runs, filing, shredding, things even you couldn't mess up, or so I thought. He shook his head sadly, but I guess I set the bar too high. Mr. Thorne, Sasha started to say something, but Dominic cut her off with a raised hand. Not now, Sasha. This is a teaching moment. He turned back to Xavier. You should have been grateful. You should have been thankful that a company like St. Clair Industries even let you in the building. Do you know what this internship could have meant for someone like you? A reference? A line on your resume? A chance to prove yourself? Dominic stepped closer, lowering his voice so only Xavier could hear, though the words still carried across the silent office. But you blew it. Because at the end of the day, you're just a coffee runner, Xavier. You're the bottom of the food chain. You don't think, you just do. Or do I need to find someone who actually values an entry-level paycheck? Xavier's eyes locked onto Dominic's. I don't have a paycheck, Xavier said quietly. I'm unpaid, remember? Exactly. You're not even worth minimum wage. The elevator dinged.
Two security guards stepped onto the 40th floor, their radios crackling softly on their belts. Xavier recognized them both. Marcus from the morning shift, who never looked up from his phone, and Jenkins, who worked weekends. They'd seen Xavier walk past their desk dozens of times. They'd never once asked his name. "There you are," Dominic said, waving them over like he was flagging down a taxi. "This young man needs to be escorted out of the building immediately, and I want his access badge deactivated permanently." Marcus pulled out a small tablet. "We'll need to file an incident report. What's the reason for removal?" "Theft," Dominic said confidently. "He stole confidential company documents, the Patterson contract, worth $3 million. Jenkins pulled out handcuffs. The metal glinted under the fluorescent lights. Several people in the office gasped. Sasha stood up from her desk, her face pale. "Dominic, this is insane. You can't just—" "You can, and I am." Dominic didn't even look at her. He kept his eyes on Xavier, savoring every second of this moment. "Sasha, if you continue to defend him, I'll have to question your judgment too." Sasha sat down, tears forming in her eyes. "Sir, we need you to come with us." Marcus reached for his arm. Xavier didn't move. He stood completely still, his messenger bag slung over his shoulder, his cheap suit slightly wrinkled from a long day. He looked at the handcuffs, then at Dominic, then at the crowd of employees watching this humiliation unfold. "Actually," Xavier said calmly, "I don't think I will." Dominic laughed. "You don't get a choice. Security, remove him, whatever it takes." Marcus grabbed Xavier's arm. Jenkins moved to the other side. Xavier reached into his pocket. "Before you do that," Xavier said, his voice steady and clear, "I think you should see something." He pulled out a black titanium card. The entire office went silent. Marcus recognized the card first. His hand fell away from Xavier's arm like he'd been burned. Jenkins took a step back, his eyes wide. The card was solid black titanium, heavier than a normal ID badge. In the corner, embossed in gold, was a single symbol, the St. Clair Industries logo. Below it, 3 words in capital letters: Executive Level Access. "Is that?" Marcus stammered. "That can't be real." Xavier walked calmly to the elevator panel on the wall. Every employee on the floor had a basic card that accessed floors 1 through 40. Managers had cards that went up to 45. Only 5 people in the entire company had cards that accessed the 50th floor, the executive suite, the boardroom, the chairman's office. Xavier swiped the card. The panel lit up green. A soft chime sounded. The digital display showed "Access granted, Level 10, Chairman authorization." Dominic's face went white. "That's impossible. You stole that card. "I didn't steal anything," Xavier said, turning to face him. "This card was issued to me 6 weeks ago by the board of directors." He held it up so everyone could see. "My name is on it. Would you like to check?" Marcus leaned in, squinting at the small text below the logo. His mouth fell open. "It says Xavier St. Clair," he whispered. The name hit the office like a shockwave. People gasped. Someone dropped a coffee cup. Sasha's hand flew to her mouth. "St. Clair?" one of the junior analysts said. "Like the founder? Like Alaric St. Clair?" Xavier nodded slowly. "Yes, my grandfather, yes." Dominic shook his head violently. No, this is some kind of joke, some kind of scam. You're an intern. You fetch coffee. You're nobody." "I was never an intern, Mr. Thorne," Xavier said with ice-cold precision. "I was sent here by the board of directors to conduct a toxicity audit, to see what my grandfather's company had become, and you showed me exactly what I needed to see." Jenkins put the handcuffs away. Marcus stepped back, his face pale. Xavier turned to address the entire office. "My name is Xavier St. Clair, and as of right now, I am your chairman." Dominic's legs seemed to give out. He grabbed the edge of a desk to steady himself. His face had gone from white to gray. Sweat beaded on his forehead. "You're lying," he said, but his voice cracked. "This is some kind of elaborate prank. You can't be—" "Can't be what?" Xavier interrupted. "Can't be a St. Clair because I'm just a coffee runner? Because I don't come from the right background? Because people like me don't belong here?" He threw Dominic's own words back at him. "Those are your words, Mr. Thorne, not mine." The office was so quiet you could hear the air conditioning humming. Xavier pulled out his phone and held it up. "For 6 weeks, I documented everything. Every insult, every stolen idea, every employee you crushed. I have recordings, photographs, witness statements. I sent a full report to the board of directors last night. They approved my recommendation this morning at 6 a.m.
Dominic's mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. "I don't believe you," he finally managed. "Show me proof. Real proof." Xavier gestured to the elevator. "Come with me." The entire office followed. It was like a parade moving through the building. Xavier led them down to the lobby, his black titanium card still in his hand. Employees from other floors saw the crowd and joined, curious about the commotion. When they reached the marble lobby, Xavier walked to the center and pointed up at the massive portrait on the wall. "Alaric St. Clair," Xavier said loudly, "founder of this company. Born 1945, died 2023. He paused. "My grandfather." People looked from the portrait to Xavier and back again. The resemblance was there in the eyes, the same strong jawline, the same quiet intensity. "I grew up hearing stories about this place, about how my grandfather built it from nothing, about how he treated every employee with respect, from the janitors to the executives, about how he believed that a company's character was defined by how it treated its most vulnerable workers." Xavier turned to face Dominic directly. "You failed that test." Dominic's survival instinct finally kicked in. His eyes darted toward the elevator, calculating if he could make it. "Don't," Xavier said calmly. "Security has already been notified. Every exit is monitored." Dominic's shoulders slumped. Then suddenly he straightened up. A desperate smile crossed his face. "Okay, fine, you got me. I was hard on you, maybe too hard. But Xavier, Mr. St. Clair, we can fix this. I can change. I can be better." His voice took on a pleading tone. "And besides, you don't have any real evidence, just your word against mine. The files I had you shred, they're gone. The bonus records, destroyed. You can't prove anything." Xavier reached into his messenger bag. He pulled out a tablet and turned it on. The screen glowed bright in the dim lobby. "Remember all those late nights you left me alone to shred documents? All those boxes of files you wanted destroyed?" Dominic's face went pale again. "I did shred them. Every single page went through that machine, just like you ordered. But first, I scanned them. Every page, every memo, every fraudulent expense report, every performance review you altered, every investigation you buried." Xavier swiped through the tablet. Thousands of documents appeared, organized in neat folders. Embezzlement, fraud, hostile work environment, harassment, retaliation against whistleblowers. It's all here. That's illegal," Dominic stammered. "You can't use stolen documents." "They're not stolen. They're company property, and as chairman, I have access to all company property." Xavier swiped to another folder. "I also have recordings. 12 hours of audio, including you admitting to redirecting employee bonuses, including you bragging about firing Marcus Chen for no reason, including you calling employees, and I quote, diversity hires who don't deserve to be here." A woman stepped out of the elevator. She wore a dark suit and carried a badge. Agent Nicole Vance, Corporate Fraud Division. She looked at Dominic. "Mr. Thorne, we need to have a conversation." Dominic's knees buckled. He grabbed the wall to keep from falling. "It's over," Xavier said simply. Agent Vance stood beside Dominic but didn't handcuff him yet. "Mr. St. Clair has requested that we handle this internally first. You'll come with us to the boardroom."
Then we'll discuss your future." Xavier gestured toward the elevator. "After you, Mr. Thorne." The walk to the 50th floor was silent. Dominic stood in the corner, his expensive suit rumpled, his face blank with shock. The crowd of employees had dispersed, whispering frantically to each other, but Sasha had followed them into the elevator. Xavier gave her a small nod. When the doors opened on the 50th floor, Dominic's legs almost gave out again. He'd only been up here twice in his entire career, once when he was hired, once when he got his promotion. The floor was pristine, thick carpet, dark wood paneling, original artwork on the walls. Xavier led them down a long hallway to a set of massive double doors. The nameplate read, "Board of Directors, authorized personnel only." He swiped his black card. The doors clicked open. Inside, 6 people sat around an enormous mahogany table. 3 men, 3 women, all in their 50s and 60s. They wore suits that probably cost more than a car. When Xavier entered, they all stood. "Mr. Chairman," the woman at the head of the table said, "welcome." Xavier nodded. "Thank you, Director Chen." He turned to Dominic. "You remember Director Chen? She's the mother of Marcus Chen, the analyst you fired 3 years ago for questioning your reports." Dominic's face went gray. "Please, sit down, Mr. Thorne," Director Chen said coldly. "We've been waiting for this conversation." Xavier took his seat at the head of the table, his grandfather's chair. The leather was soft and worn from years of use. A small gold plate on the armrest read, "A. St. Clair." Dominic remained standing, frozen. "Sit," Xavier repeated. It wasn't a request. Dominic sat. Xavier opened his tablet and placed it on the table. "Let's begin with the embezzlement charges, shall we?" The meeting lasted 45 minutes. Dominic tried to defend himself at Hearst, but every excuse was met with evidence. Bank statements, email logs, testimony from employees too afraid to speak up before. By the end, he just sat there, silent, defeated. "Dominic Thorne," Xavier said formally, reading from a prepared statement, "effective immediately, you are terminated from St. Clair Industries for cause. Your benefits are forfeit, your stock options are revoked. You will be escorted from the building and banned from the premises. Agent Vance will be pursuing criminal charges for embezzlement and fraud." Dominic said nothing. He simply stood, his movements mechanical, and let Agent Vance guide him toward the door. "Wait," Xavier said. Dominic turned. "Your badge and your keys." He pulled them from his pocket and placed them on the table. Then he was gone. The door closed. The room was silent for a moment. "Who else?" Director Chen asked. Xavier pulled up another file. "Richard Morrison, Senior Manager of Operations, 42 documented incidents of harassment, created a hostile environment for female employees, retaliated against anyone who reported him." "Approved," another board member said. "Jennifer Walsh, Director of Compliance, failed to investigate 17 formal complaints, took bribes from department heads to bury reports." "Approved." Thomas Hendricks, VP of Sales, used company funds for personal expenses, falsified sales reports to inflate his commissions. "Approved." Xavier made 3 phone calls. Each conversation was brief and identical. "This is Xavier St. Clair, Chairman of the Board. Effective immediately, you were terminated for cause. Security will escort you from the building. You have 15 minutes to collect personal items." By 3 p.m., 4 people who had terrorized employees for years were gone. Their offices were being emptied, their computer access was revoked, their names were being removed from the directory. Xavier stood at the boardroom window, looking down at the city below. His reflection stared back at him. "This is just the beginning," he said quietly. "We have a lot of work to do." Director Chen stood beside him. "Your grandfather would be proud." The next morning, Xavier called an all-staff meeting. Every employee in the building crowded into the main conference hall on the 20th floor. The room buzzed with nervous energy. 4 managers were fired yesterday. Rumors were flying. People didn't know if they should be scared or hopeful. Xavier stepped onto the stage. He wore a proper suit now, perfectly tailored, but he'd kept his worn sneakers, a small reminder of where he'd been just yesterday. "My name is Xavier St. Clair," he began.
Most of you met me as an intern, as someone you walked past in the hallway, someone you didn't notice. He paused. That was intentional. I needed to see this company the way my grandfather saw it when he started, from the bottom up. The room was dead silent. What I found broke my heart. This company was built on respect, integrity, in the belief that every person matters. But somewhere along the way, we lost that. We created a culture where bullies thrived and good people suffered in silence. Sasha stood in the back of the room, tears streaming down her face. That changes today, Xavier said firmly. Effective immediately, St. Clair Industries is implementing new policies. First, every employee will have access to an anonymous reporting system that goes directly to the board. Second, all complaints will be investigated by an independent third party, not internal HR. Third, we're conducting salary audits to ensure equal pay for equal work. People started whispering. A few even smiled. And fourth, Xavier continued, I'm promoting people who actually deserve it. He gestured toward the back. Sasha Reed, can you come up here? Sasha looked shocked. She walked slowly to the stage, wiping her eyes. Sasha has been the backbone of our client relations department for 3 years. She did the work while others took the credit. That ends now. Xavier handed her a folder. Congratulations, you're the new vice president of client relations. Your salary has tripled and you have full hiring authority. Sasha's hands shook as she opened the folder. I don't know what to say. Say you'll help me fix this place, Xavier said. Sasha hugged him. The room erupted in applause. That evening, after everyone else had gone home, Xavier rode the elevator to the 50th floor alone. The building was quiet, except for the hum of the cleaning crew working their way through the lower levels. He thought about joining them, maybe helping empty a few trash cans. But tonight he had somewhere else to be. The chairman's office was exactly as his grandfather had left it. Dark wood furniture, shelves filled with books about business ethics and leadership, a photo on the desk of Alaric as a young man, holding a broom, standing in front of a small office building, the beginning of the empire. Xavier walked to the massive chair behind the desk. He'd seen his grandfather sit in this chair 100 times during visits as a kid. Back then, it had seemed like a throne. Now it was just a chair, a tool, a responsibility. He sat down slowly. The leather creaked under his weight. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows, he could see the entire city spread out before him. Millions of people living their lives. Somewhere down there, probably, Dominic Thorne was probably packing his belongings, preparing for court dates and legal battles. Somewhere else, Sasha was probably calling her family to tell them about her promotion. Xavier opened the top drawer of the desk. Inside was a handwritten note on yellowed paper. He recognized his grandfather's handwriting immediately. To whoever sits in this chair after me, remember that power is not a privilege, it is a responsibility. Every decision you make affects real people with real lives. Treat them the way you would want to be treated if you were in their shoes. Lead with integrity, compassion, and courage. Make me proud. By Alaric St. Clair. Xavier folded the note carefully and placed it in his pocket. Then he pulled out his phone and opened his contacts. He scrolled to a number labeled Cleaning Crew Manager. Hello, this is Xavier St. Clair. I wanted to talk about raising wages for the night shift. When can we meet? He looked up at the portrait of his grandfather hanging on the wall opposite the desk. Alaric's painted eyes seemed to shine with approval. I'm ready now, Grandpa. Let's rebuild this together. Outside, the city lights twinkled like stars. Inside, the legacy was reborn. Let's rebuild this together. Because the most powerful people in the room are usually the ones nobody bothers to notice.